Hey guys, it's Rebecca, and I am out here today with Kodiak, and we're going to go over some groundwork exercises. So, I actually really love doing groundwork with my horses, and we're not talking like you're going to have sort of a basic, right? Your horse is going to have to be able to walk and beside you and behind you and in front of you and things like that. So this isn't like groundwork for just a 3-year-old. This is groundwork to actually exercise your horse in a different way than you can do under saddle. And I like to do groundwork on days where, like, maybe I had a really long day at work and I don't want to not work my horse, but I need it to be short and quick, maybe 15 minutes, right? I'll pull them out, don't even have to tack them up. Just can do a little bit of groundwork and then we're done for the day. It's really great to stimulate them mentally and physically. I mean, it's great to teach them new things or to introduce something to them that maybe you're going to introduce under saddle in the future, like half steps and piaffe and even things like haunches in and stuff like that. It's great to gymnasticize their body. And to be able to access their body and teach them self-carriage, how to self-organize their body. You know, a lot of times when we're riding, we're helping them organize their body. But in groundwork, a lot of times, for the most part, they have to self-organize. They have to figure out how to put themselves together to be able to do what you're asking. And I also like it like on those really cold days. I don't have an indoor, and we can get some pretty wicked winds across this farm. So in January, when I do not want to put on boots and breeches because I'm in my coveralls, that might be a day that I pick to do groundwork because it's sometimes with a shorter daylight, I'm running out of time and groundwork is just a nice thing to do for the day. So anyhow, we're going to demonstrate that today. And we're going to just talk about some basic stuff, and then we're going to go on over a couple sessions here and show a little bit more advanced stuff and what you can do with your horse. I mean, the sky is the limit because we're going to be doing it in the arena, but then you can do it on different terrain, which is super gymnastizing, right? Like half steps, going down a hill or up a hill, or asking for different things on varied terrain, which I do a lot because we have some open fields out here that have different undulations in them. So, but today we're just going to be in the arena, sort of showing you some basics. So let's get started. And a lot of these things, you're going to be sort of introducing at the walk. You're going to be maybe introducing even at the hot. And then you're going to move on to doing it at higher speeds. All right, so let me show you a little equipment first because this is what I find helpful. But if you don't have this, you can start with like a natural horsemanship halter, but you want something that you have a little bit more control over their nose and face than just a regular halter. This is a cavesson. Which then I can direct his nose. We won't be doing a lot of that today in the introduction stuff, but where I can direct his nose in different directions. This gives me a lot of sort of control, but it's a very sort of quiet, piece of equipment. There is times where I will introduce doing stuff can you please stop? Where I'm introducing stuff with a bridle with a bit in the mouth, and that would be what I would call in hand work, not so much groundwork. And I do a lot with that also with these guys, and it's really useful to be able to do some of the lateral work at the walk and at the trot. And while with him, it's really hard for me to keep up with him at the trot and the canter because he's so big. So could you please stop? I know you hate when we're talking, but you have to behave. So anyhow, let's get started. I'll just show you some of the basics, but this is my setup that I like. You do not need this much of a lunge line. I have a tendency to sort of send them out and then bring them back and do different things that way, let them stretch out a little bit and then bring back and maybe collect them up a little bit. So I have the longer line, but you don't need probably, a 10-foot line, or a 20-foot line would be plenty. So that's sort of my setup. I have a whip, which is really more, I will tap them with it for proprioception, but it's really more of you'll see, because I will do different things with it that will end up being cues, and to cue them to do something. So okay, let's get started. So one of the first things that you need to be able to do is, obviously your horse needs to be able to lead. Come up next to you, just like you would with any horse, but you also want to be able to walk in front of them. And you would think, oh, of course, Rebecca, that's not a big deal. But some horses won't actually point their nose directly at you and walk. So you want them to be able to, that like you can keep their shoulders sort of square with your shoulders, so that, they're walking directly towards you. Okay, so that's another thing. You're also going to want to be able to feel safe to be able to, can you walk on? That I can stand back here and do stuff, and I can stand, come on, keep walking. That I can be sort of back here and feel safe, okay? And this is like when you do any sort of long lining or in hand work, you have the bridle, you're going to want to be able to, on both sides, be able to walk along with them here and even back here and feel safe. So that is something to practice, before you're starting to teach them anything, to practice, to be able to, can you get them to walk up beside you and walk if you're in this position as opposed to this position. So as equally as important it is to be able to be in this position and have them walk, it's equally important to be in this position and have them walk, because there's going to be different things that we do. So that's sort of some of the very, very, very prerequisites to being able to do some of the in-hand work and the groundwork that we're going to show you. Okay, so let's start for our first lesson. We'll start at the halt, because one of the things that I like to do is teach my horse to be able to halt square, and you do that beautifully. But I also like them to be able to pick up a leg on the lightest cue. So I barely touched him, and I want them to pick up the leg. So if you have a horse that is not, well, that was beautiful, but that was the wrong one. There you go. If you have a horse that's not, what people will do is they'll start hitting them harder and harder and harder. And what I would say, that I understand that concept, because there's two ways when you're teaching something. You can either increase frequency or you can increase the amount of pressure. So for instance, if you're teaching a horse to go off your leg and he won't move off the leg, because say he's never learned that, obviously you're going to want to first put in a cue that he already knows, right? So we're talking babies here. But one of the things is you can just kind of move your legs back and forth on the horse, and it becomes annoying, and they start to walk off, and you stop and they think, oh, wait a minute, that's what she wanted. So in this instance, this is the same way that we're going to sort of use the whip. Instead of, if he doesn't respond, hitting them harder, right? Because then that can very easily escalate. Then you always have to make sure you come back to the softest pressure. What I would encourage you to do, if your horse doesn't know, you're going to touch them, and you're going to repeatedly touch them, kind of like an annoying fly. And then when they pick it up, you're going to stop. Okay, so that's a way to get them to go off the lightest pressure, and you're being very, very careful about using the whip as an extension of your hand and not as a punishing tool. Okay, could you stop chewing on that? I know, you're bored. Okay, so that's something that is really, really important, because you're going to learn to have them be able to pick up a leg at the walk. So I'm going to have him walk with me, and now I'm going to want, this one though, this one. Yeah, good. So I want him, and he already knows this, so this is why he's offering both legs. But I want to be able to get him to accentuate in the gait the leg that I'm tapping. So I need a longer whip with this horse, but I also need him to let me walk in different spots. Good. And that he knows to sort of take a smaller, quicker step because he's learned some half steps. But you want to be able to see a reaction if you tickle them with the whip in the walk also. And then eventually you'll get to that in the trot. Okay, so that's kind of where you want to go. And then eventually, let me see, I'm going to have to get away from the camera a little bit because he's going to want to walk around me. So let's come down here. Because it's really nice to be able to teach them to use their bodies in different ways. I think you've seen a video with my other horse that I've taught him to sort of accentuate, get out, accentuate his knee action a little bit by the whip. And once you get, yeah, it's almost like the Spanish walk, but I am not really looking for the Spanish walk. I'm just looking for this accentuation of the front legs at the moment. And then, of course, I click and treat because he did exactly what I wanted. And, of course, we're building on duration already. Your horse, when you first start, is not going to have this sort of duration to do it multiple strides. You have to build that in time, okay? So, and that can also look the same way with the hind legs. And I will show you, he's not really warmed up yet, but let's see if I can show you just a little bit of what that looks like in the hind legs. Good. Trot, trot, trot. Good. Good. So that's just a sort of warm up, right, to some half steps. He needs more activity and stuff like that, but that's what it would look like on the hind legs. Okay, so I had to take a little bit different positioning with him. I did allow him to go out around in the circle. You might find as you start to do that, if you're allowing them to go around on the circle and they really don't understand what you're asking them to do, that they will start to veer their butt out. And that you don't want to do. Then you have to go to the edge of the arena and you would have to do it like this, where they can't veer out. Try. Come. Good. So that's where you can keep them from veering their butt out a little bit on the edge of the circle. And it can be as benign. It does not have to be. A lot of times I think when people think about half steps and pee off, it's like this really amplified. And it gets there. One, he's not even warmed up. We've literally just walked out of the barn. So I would not expect him to be able to just pee off the top of his, after just kind of being standing in the cross ties, getting groomed and tacked up. But it can start really quiet and soft like that. And then when you start quiet and soft like that, you don't get all the tension that you see in a lot of the competition horses with the pee off and the half steps and stuff like that. And we really want to, the flies are bad today, aren't they? And we really want to, stop. We really want to not bring up the tension. I will, one last thing let me to discuss before we move on to some more complicated things is, in this aspect, I do not put any equipment on my horses. I do not have them in side reins. I do not have them in any sort of thing that restricts their head or ties them into place. One, I want them to self-organize. That part of the reason that I do this is because I want him to figure out where he has to put his body to self-organize. I also, I don't want to restrict his head and neck. If he's inverting in the process, I know, I'm just trying to get the flies off of you. If he's inverting in the process, then that shows me that there's something wrong and there's a weakness that we need to address, right? So I'm not really looking to, kind of harness him together. If I feel that he needs more guidance, meaning I need to be a little bit more influential about how he's organizing his body, I can redo an exercise that helps him organize his body in a different way. I can also put the bridle on him and actually stand here and do things and have the bridle's influence on him. Okay, so that is a little bit more sophisticated than what we're talking about today, and we will get there in future videos. But that's the other option if I feel like that he's really just not organizing himself in a good way. But there is a lot of exercises that you can teach them, even how to arch their neck, how to hold their shoulders back, how to lower their croup. There's a lot of things that you can sort of teach them by touching their bodies in different ways and giving them the proprioception there, and also rewarding when they do what you want, that you can really influence how they use their body without having to put a lot of gear on them. And then it also, could you please stop? It also then keeps them happier in their work because they're not being forced into it. Okay, that's it for day 1. I will see you next time, and we'll go into something a little bit more fun and complicated. Okay, see you next time.